There's now one less check on the leadership in the state legislature after lawmakers voted to eliminate the 8-year term limit on the Senate president. The House did the same thing for its speaker back in 2015, and now, provided they both keep winning elections, the two top officials in the legislature could end up leading indefinitely. The Senate vote passed with little opposition. Just 3 Democrats and all 3 of the chamber's Republicans voted no, with one of the latter, Senator Patrick O'Connor, citing the risk of centralized power, a credible concern given Democrats' supermajorities in both chambers. All this came a few weeks after another vote on another measure intended to hold lawmakers accountable on Beacon Hill failed. That proposal, which would have made House committee votes public, was quickly shot down in a voice vote, which means we don't know which way each lawmaker voted on that either. I'm joined now by the lawmaker behind the committee vote measure, Representative Erika Uyterhoeven, one of the 3 Democrats to vote against removing term limits in the Senate, Senator Becca Rausch, and Erin Leahy, the head of Act on Mass, which works to make Beacon Hill more open and responsive to the public. Thank you all for being here. Erika, can you explain what the amendment that you proposed that was shot down would have done?
So it's very simple. It essentially would put something that the Senate actually already does, which is put committee votes online, accessible to the public, and on the website.
Why is that something that you think is important?
I think that any measure that makes our state house more accessible to the public so that they can engage meaningfully is a really important part of having a healthy democracy. And I think that, the committee votes being public, it is the tip of the iceberg of making this institution that is oftentimes so hard to engage with, so hard to understand what's going on for the average person, to make that more accessible, more transparent, and more accountable to all.
Speaking of it being hard for the average person to understand what's going on, I want to roll video of your amendment going down on the House floor that was tweeted out by Act on Mass, and then get you to just describe a little bit of what we see happen in it. So let's take a look.
Question comes on the adoption of the order, which Representative Uyterhoeven offers an amendment in the hands of the clerk. Clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment number 5. Ms. Uyterhoeven of Somerville moves to amend the order in proposed rules 17B in lines 522, 523.
There be no objection, the clerk will dispense with the further reading of the amendment. The chair has none. Question comes on the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The nays have it. The amendment is not adopted.
So when it comes to informing people about how Beacon Hill works, what would you point to in that video that they should take note of?
I think that this is not on the record, right? So we don't know. We have 160 reps in this chamber. We did not have to go on the record for this vote. Oftentimes that is how it happens. Of course, with certain legislation, we do have recorded votes because it's necessary and a bill is moving forward. Yeah. There's certainly there's certain things that are less important and less decisive, so we do it on a voice vote. So I'm not criticizing that process. That is part of legislative, parliamentarian process. But that's really the takeaway. And I think that, it's funny, I was thinking the other day about how, I have roll called a number of votes last session. Some people not in the legislature, even my district, are saying, oh, you're throwing a Molotov cocktail, you're causing so much trouble. That's like a Wednesday in the Senate. You have roll calls, and it's not that it don't come with political costs, but it is really a struggle to get more transparency both in the chamber and in the committee process.
Molotov cocktail seems a little overheated, though, when you talk about asking for a roll call vote. Yeah. Becca, why did you vote to, or why did you not support eliminating term limits for the Senate president, currently Karen Spilka?
Yeah, it's not a personal thing. It's a small d democracy thing. I firmly believe that term limits are really important to small d democracy and serve a really important purpose for helping different individuals, different visions, different voices to rise in that leadership process and in the governance of our state. And so I certainly heard the concerns from my colleagues about different rules of engagement effectively, right? We have the commonly called big 3, right? The governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate president. The other 2 don't have term limits, and the third one did, which can change the perceived negotiating power. And so I certainly hear and appreciate that concern. But at the end of the day, every decision we make as lawmakers is a balancing act. And for me, the balance came out this way.
And you just believe as a matter of principle that there should be a structure that gives rise to new leadership, new perspectives, new voices? I want to make sure I'm getting this right. As a matter of principle, you think just new blood is good, politically speaking?
I think that shifts in established leadership are useful and productive over time, right? I mean, an 8-year term limit is I think, a reasonable amount of time. The fact that the folks who wrote our state constitution hundreds of years ago did not put term limits in for the governor should not, in my opinion, dictate decisions we make today in the 21st century.
Okay. Erin, as you look at these two developments in the House and the Senate, which act on mass, both of which act on mass criticized, do you see them offering together a fundamental lesson in how Beacon Hill works? And if so, what is that basic takeaway?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was really disappointing, if not surprising. I mean, I think we all saw at least the rejection of the amendment for public committee votes coming, and once we knew it was being talked about, we all kind of saw the end of Senate President term limits coming as well. This is indicative of a problem with concentration of power on Beacon Hill, where there are just a few people that have really outsized power over the flow and passage of legislation. And the lack of transparency is, I think, really more a symptom of that than it is a cause of it in and of itself.
Do you two agree with Erin's takeaway, since you spent time working inside the building? Is that the lesson here when we look at these two things together?
Yeah, I think I completely agree about it being a symptom of concentration of power, right? And also I think that, to me, a lot of this is about having a healthy democracy, and that our democracy is actually quite fragile, cannot be taken for granted. And when I say that, sometimes people think, I'm talking about voter suppression at the ballot box, or, the uprising of fascist movements and demagogues. But in this particular context, what I'm talking about is the lawmaking process, advocacy, and our fully funding our common good. And these are our ability and our capacity as legislators, advocates, and constituents to collectively solve our collective problems together. And so when we have a system that keeps so many people out of the process, and I think my congresswoman says it very eloquently, the people closest to the pain should be closest to the power, that's not what's manifesting on Beacon Hill in many ways. And that is not to say we don't do good things, right? With concentration of power, we have passed really good laws. But I think that we can do much better, and there's still more work to be done.
Becca, what's your take? Do you, like Erin and like Erika, see concentration of power as the root problem here, and a lack of transparency as a symptom of it?
I think that there are a lot of things at play here. I'm not sure what the cause and effect relationships might be, but I think at bottom, change is hard, right? Institutional change is hard. The Senate has taken multiple steps, both to decentralize power, right? Every Democratic member of the Senate has leadership in at least one committee, if not multiple committees, right? Committee assignments are just handed out. I will be chairing one joint committee and vice chairing 2 additional committees.
By the way,
right?
I saw that release, and I should have retained what you're going to be co-chairing, and I didn't. What's the committee that you're going to be leading?
Yeah, I will be returning to the Joint Committee on the Environment and Natural Resources, and this is an incredibly important time for that committee. I'm very excited to be returning to that post. Right, we have pretty significant work to do with regard to what I hope will be an upcoming and forthcoming environmental bond bill, because our existing one is going to expire this session. We have a huge amount of work to do on plastics and waste management, and we have some very real work to do on environmental health, particularly as it pertains to climate action and meeting our climate goals, both in 2030 and in 2050. And if we don't pay attention to these other pieces, we are not going to make those goals. Right? I'll be the vice chair of the Senate Committee on Census, and also the vice chair of the Joint Committee on children, families, and
so as you say all that, your point being that there is some equitable distribution of power in the Senate.
Yeah, and I, as I understand it, that change also happened over time, and to the transparency and accountability component. This was one of the things that when I first ran in 2018, I launched the Transparency Pledge, and more than a dozen candidates joined on, and we started getting some press coverage about it, and then it kind of manifested and went from there. And this is something that I said to my district: I'm going to be transparent and accountable to you, and I'm going to support every single roll call, and I have done that in the Senate since the day I walked in the door. And lo and behold, people started coming along, and more people started standing for roll calls. And, an institutional change takes time. But you see now all of the, I mean, this actually also predates me, but all of the Senate committee votes are published online. We are starting to see more legislators do what I do, which is to post all of our votes on our own websites regardless. And, change can be slow sometimes. But I think, at least for me, I think we are seeing something of a shift.
There's a question, I think, that sort of hovers behind everything we've talked about so far, which is whether transparency and decentralized power are good in their own right, or whether they tend to yield a particular type of policy outcome. Erin, what's your take on that? Do you see these as things that are just, as a matter of principle, we should be doing business a certain way, or do you see that openness as leading to a certain type of legislation being passed?
So absolutely, this is important on principle, right? This is about not just transparency in and of its own sake, but for democracy, right? But I do think that it does lead to different material outcomes when you're enabling more voices, diverse voices, everyday people, not just those who are kind of more wealthy or have more time in their hands or well-connected, or of course, people who can afford to hire lobbyists to advocate on behalf of their issues. When more everyday people are able to engage in the legislative process, to follow a bill from start to finish, to know what are the road bumps along the way that they need to address in order to move their bill forward, that makes us all better. And I think that is something that we really need to improve upon. I would love to bring up this study that Brown University did a few years ago. They investigated who was delaying climate action in Massachusetts. We are behind a lot of similarly blue states in terms of robust climate action. I'm so grateful for all of the work that the senator has done and glad that you're chairing this committee again this session. But they looked at all of the data from one legislative session and found that despite the fact that over 90% of public testimony was in support of moving climate bills forward, ultimately only a few of those even made it to the floor for a vote out of hundreds. And it was way more likely that a bill that was supported by the utility lobby got signed by the governor.
So just to tease this out, is the argument that you're making here that if, for example, committee votes in the House were made public, that people who wanted to see a particular type of action taken on climate could then contact the legislators in the House who were impeding that and say, hey, come on, we need to do this differently, that it would allow them to be nudged in a way they aren't currently nudged?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And it goes back to the concentration of power issue as well, wherein one of the findings from Brown University was that one of the reasons why climate action was so delayed is the power that leadership has over committees specifically.
Do you two agree, as people who do work in the building, that decentralizing power, creating greater transparency will yield a certain type of policy outcome, or do you have a different take than Erin?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that those measures would necessarily generate different outcomes. I think that public engagement is a huge component of this, right? When we all are voted into office by a majority of the people who vote in our respective districts. And so certainly the more we hear from constituents, that can influence our work and our ability to advocate successfully for things that we certainly agree with, and then can say, look, I've got hundreds and hundreds of constituents calling to me and talking to me about this. Does publicizing a robust committee vote yield that particular result? I don't know, right? People are busy.
Right, that's true.
And state government is the middle child of government, and so we sometimes don't get the. I've been using this analogy for a while, right? Local government is the youngest, and the feds are the oldest, and we're kind of the middle kid.
I love how you just made Erika totally lose it.
That's really a great way to put it. I've always tried to describe how we're in the middle of a lot of
right.
Erika, I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think that if the House did make its committee votes public, that different sort of legislation would end up coming out of the body?
I don't think it's the only thing we have to do. I think it's one, and like I said, this is where it's the tip of the iceberg of what we need to make change. I mean, just to share as an example, right, it's hard to even know what's happening in the State House if you don't have State House News Service subscription. Mm-hmm. That is thousands of dollars a year, right, that people don't have access to. There's a lot that's sort of these structural barriers in place that prevent people from engaging, getting to the State House, being able to take a whole day off of work to testify, right, being able to access your state rep. So I think there's so many pieces, right? There's not just a one solution that's going to solve everything. There's no silver bullet. So I think I see it as a very important step. but it's not the only be-all, end-all.
I do,
go ahead. Yeah,
if you don't mind,
absolutely.
Adam, for me to just jump in on,
Really
on
quickly.
a point that the rep just mentioned, which is committee hearings have previously only been in person. This is one of the silver linings of COVID. Actually, all of our committee hearings are going to be hybrid going forward.
Which I know, and that's a good, upbeat, positive note to end on, make us all feel a little bit better. Erika Uyterhoeven, Becca Rausch, and Erin Leahy, thank you.